Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Koepp, co-founder of From Day One, our forum on corporate values. Welcome to today's webinar. We're excited about this topic, looking at financial wellness through an evolving career. But before we get started, I want to share briefly something special we have for today's attendees. One of our monthly virtual conferences is coming up tomorrow, Wednesday, November 17th, and it's titled Building a Skilled Team, How Upskilling, Coaching, and Recognition Can Help. It's going to be particularly valuable for employers who are looking for creative ways to attract top talent and keep them engaged. Thanks to our partners, including today's sponsor, we have some complimentary VIP tickets available for those who've joined today's webinar, and that's you. I'm putting a link in the chat space right now. You can take advantage of this one. The regular price for our conference tickets is $149, and this link will give you a free VIP ticket for the whole day's activities. Today, we'll be exploring the topic, supporting employee financial wellness through all stages of life. As workers go through their careers from early days to nearing retirement, they've got financial situations that constantly evolve. So how can employers provide financial wellness and literacy support that's relevant and individualized in order to have the most helpful impact? And what can employers do to make sure they bring diversity, equity, and inclusion into their financial wellness plans, including the needs of all genders as well as a variety of life experiences? Our sponsor today is Northstar. I'll tell you a bit about them. Northstar helps employees make better use of their total compensation with innovative fintech tools and a team of in-house financial advisors. By making financial advice accessible, Northstar helps companies support their teams at scale during onboarding, open enrollment, equity events, and more. Now, a few quick logistical items before we get started. This webinar is being recorded and it will be available on demand soon after the event. So you can look out for an email in about 24 hours with the link. That email will also have info on how you can get professional development credits for this session from both the Society of Human Resource Management and the HR Certification Institute. And look out for a written account of our conversation on our website at fromdayone.co. About 45 minutes into this webinar, we'll have a Q&A session, and you can submit your questions anytime using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Now, it's my great pleasure to moderate today's session, and I'd like to introduce our speaker, Peng, who's CEO and co-founder of Northstar. Prior to founding Northstar, Will was a product designer and a venture capital investor. In fact, his firm was an early investor in Coinbase, Guideline, Even, and Oscar. Inspired by the positive change that fintech can have on people's lives, Will set out to solve the inequality of financial guidance in a way that drives meaningful action. As a Taiwanese immigrant, Will is passionate about supporting underserved communities to help them achieve financial stability and reach their personal goals. Okay, let's get started. Will, let's begin with your personal story, since it's where your passion for this venture comes from. What aspects of your life experience inspired the creation of Northstar?
Well, first off, thanks, Steve, and From Day One for hosting this really important conversation, and looking forward to hearing some of the questions and having a conversation with the group here today as well. This is an area that's personally important to me, as Steve mentioned. I founded Northstar because I faced a problem that so many employees and individuals face today. I entered the workforce with 35 grand in student debt, which is unfortunately average in the US. I had no savings, but my employer offered some pretty great benefits. They had offered equity compensation, generous health insurance, 401k match, but I had no idea what to do with those things, how to take advantage of that for my personal situation. And a lot of that comes from my personal story as well. And I think it's really important to recognize that personal finances are more than just the dollars and cents. It's the stories that impact our relationship with our personal finances. As Steve mentioned, I was born in Taiwan, and my parents moved their kids to the US for the classic Asian American dream. But they didn't have very much money in their bank account or the knowledge to navigate the US financial system. And so I was very much on my own with a lot of the decisions that I had to make that I mentioned before. So which payment plan should I go with for my student debt? How do I balance investing versus saving versus paying off my debt? How do I choose the right health insurance plan? These complex decisions drive a lot of people to do nothing, but unfortunately doing nothing is actually doing something, and in many cases it's not in your own best interests. And unfortunately, my story is really common. After seeing firsthand from a personal perspective, but also as an investor in fintech companies to see how we can actually solve this problem in a completely new way, but also really partnering with innovative companies to help change people's lives. For example, we work with clients like Snap and Zoom, among many others. We wanted to create a product and a service that would address the inequality of financial guidance. There's a saying that we have here that you shouldn't need money to make money. And oftentimes people who are deep in debt need support the most. With that, we want to give people access to education as well as personal advice and the tools to take action and better utilize not just their salary, but also their full total compensation to make financial decisions.
Sounds great. Could you give us just maybe a little more of a bio of the creation of the company and also how you set out to differentiate yourself from other people who may be in this space?
Yeah, so Northstar is a financial wellness platform, and so like I said, we partner with companies to help employees make better use of their total compensation. And we do this through fintech tools as well as financial advisors of many different kinds, CFPs, tax advisors, estate planners. And we help employees navigate decisions about retirement, equity, health benefit selection, tax planning, saving, debt payoff, basically any financial decision that we support with. And we wanted to be really intentional about building an organization, a company, and a solution that we'd be proud to recommend to our own loved ones. The financial services industry doesn't have the best reputation, so we wanted to make sure that we are 100% aligned with the individual to recommend decisions that are best for them. So the second is how do we make sure that we can deliver financial advice in a completely new way. Instead of the traditional method of meeting a person in a suit and getting a 50-page PDF of a financial plan, we wanted to provide advice through a digital format, but also allow for people to send chat messages or set up phone calls, the flexibility to work with a financial advisor. And the third thing is that we wanted to recognize that employment is the primary source of wealth creation. These financial plans are really kind of like life plans. And we also wanted to recognize that, as I mentioned, total compensation is more than just your salary. And we want to highlight all the great benefits that employers offer to help their employees achieve their financial and life goals. I think there's a really interesting macro trend around the shift from defined benefit pension plans to defined contribution 401k plans. That's just one vertical of people's personal finances, but I think it reflects the overall shift in responsibility to the individual to make the best decision for themselves. So it's no longer enough just to say, hey, here's your salary, here's your health insurance plans, here's the retirement plan, good luck. But we believe that total compensation needs to be accompanied with this sort of concierge to help employees make the best decisions, but also highlight all of the different aspects of total compensation that employers are offering. And obviously, from an accessibility perspective, we want to make sure that not only is the price point attainable for individuals who can't afford financial advisors, but also match them one-on-one with a financial advisor paired with them. So it's not like a call center, with somebody who has a similar background to them. DEI is the cornerstone of true financial well-being. And I think it's really important that people get to work with an advisor who has been through similar challenges that they have, similar background and ethnicity and financial situation, because there's so much overlap with, again, personal finances are more than just the dollars and cents.
Right, and employees want individualized attention and help these days, which we'll get into in more detail. But I wanted to take a step back and just look at some historical context. Like over the last couple of decades, it really seems like instability and uncertainty have been part of everyday life for so many people. Thinking back to the Great Recession and obviously in the past 2 years, the pandemic, how has that affected their ability to save and plan well for the future?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think of course, the pandemic is top of mind, and it's created a lot of stress on a lot of the trends that we've been talking about. But I would say that the pandemic has only exacerbated the pre-existing inequalities that already exist. And so whether it be income inequality or lack of a network of support or lack of advice, it's amplified those. And for people who are living paycheck to paycheck, or people who were already on the edge, that's impacted individuals to a significant amount. I was just in another panel with an economist from Gusta, which is a payroll platform, and they found that as a result of the pandemic, they found that the average median pay for men versus women was actually equalized as a result of the pandemic, but not for the reasons that we like. The reason was that women were disproportionately forced out of the workforce as a result of the pandemic. And so I think data can help us understand the ways that the pandemic has exacerbated these issues. Another data point that we've heard from one of our clients was that they did a survey in the middle of the pandemic and found that even though this employer did not was not impacted by layoffs as a result of the pandemic, they found that over half of their employees' partners or spouses were affected by layoffs or pay cuts. And so it's a really important point here that supporting employees' financial wellness is not just about the employee, but about the entire family. And that leads to a kind of related point, is that financial wellness and mental health are also very closely related.
Yes.
Mental health benefits were already an increasingly popular benefit, and the pandemic brought to light how important they are, as we've all been dealing with significant new stresses as a result. But mental health and personal finances are inextricably linked. There was a UBS study last year that found that half of employees aged 18 to 50 admitted that their finances kept them up at night. So even before the pandemic, this was an issue. There was a 2016 study from the International Foundation of Employee Benefit Plans that found that 76% of employees financial challenges exhibit stress at work, and 59% aren't able to focus at work. So I think it's definitely an overall trend that we're seeing, and increasingly important to support employees holistically.
Absolutely. In my case, my wife is a psychotherapist, and she gives me reports, kind of aggregates the info and stress on over, well, the workplace, children, and money, and those are biggies, and they often, mingle together, have a kind of a compounding effect. I wanted to ask you next, okay, these services are being provided through people's employers. And why does that make sense? I understand that people mostly acquire their wealth through their jobs, especially in the sort of great middle class and entry-level workers. So how does that fit together well?
Yeah, there are two main aspects of why this makes sense. The first is, like you said, employment is the primary source of wealth creation, but also employers are increasingly offering kind of a wider range of benefits, broadly defined. But the second aspect of it is something that we think a lot about from a product design perspective, is the behavioral psychology of personal finances. If it's not enough to know what to do, kind of having access to educational content, it may not even be enough to have access to the best advice, but how do you help people take action on that advice? And we're going up against kind of classic behavioral psychology challenges, which is that individuals find it really difficult to understand long-term impact on a day-to-day basis. So said differently, it's really hard for people to save. It's really hard for people to resist the consumer urge to buy something. And so I think what is really amazing about partnering with employers is not only the first point that I made, which is that we can, for the first time, make your financial plans more than just about how much you earn, but rather what great perks and benefits that you receive from your employer to achieve your financial goal and life goals. But it's also about, when are people specifically looking for advice? When do people have specific questions? There's a saying from when I was a venture investor that you need to solve the vitamin versus painkiller problem. When you have a vitamin, it's really hard for people to take the vitamins, but when you have a pain, those are the moments that people have questions. And what we find, and we've really developed our program with our clients, our employer partners, is that the employee experience involves financial decisions from beginning to end. These are things starting from the moment that a candidate receives an offer letter from you. How do I understand what I'm going to be getting if I accept this offer? And then for new hire onboarding, for many of our clients, we actually host new hire onboarding presentations because our advisors deeply understand our employer partners' benefits packages and compensation packages, so that we can kind of be that extension of your team. And throughout, whether it be through open enrollment, helping employees kind of meet one-on-one to make the best decisions for themselves, all the way to when somebody leaves the company. We actually give it to employees for free when they leave the company. So the entire employee experience is really important to support, and that's how we think about it, especially in a really competitive hiring environment. We want to help employees have a better understanding of their compensation packages so they can make more informed decisions. And working with employers enables us to reach more job seekers who have those difficult decisions to make.
That sounds great. It's really, you make a good point about the vitamins and the painkillers. I remember as a young entry-level employee being really annoyed at the money being withheld from my paycheck for my 401k, because if you're not making that much money anyway. But I was persuaded by, I was persuaded that had good long-term impact. And then just by looking at it, which you see, oh, this is actually starting to add up and amount to something. One thing that you have that helps people when they're just picking from a lot of different choices and understanding the kind of the little universe of their benefits, you have something called the total compensation menu. How does that work, and how does it help people out?
Yeah, and to your point of the 401k match or the 401k automatic contributions, what's really interesting about that is that from a behavioral psychology perspective, automatic enrollment is a phenomenal tool to create a default state. So remember at the very beginning when I said that in the face of complexity, the default for a lot of people today is doing nothing. Well, I think the automatic enrollments in 401ks, I'm sure many of in this group have seen the stats, but it's an increase from say 20% enrollment to say 70% enrollment on average when you have automatic enrollment. So I think that's an incredibly powerful tool, and we're looking to incorporate similar default states within our platform so that the money moves into different places automatically to solve that action component. And to your question about the total compensation menu, we actually call it something different than what it traditionally has been, which is a total rewards statement. And the reason behind that, and the epiphany that we had from talking to hundreds of employers and HR leaders, is that total reward statements have existed for a long time. Some of you may have used them or currently use them. And financial wellness solutions have existed for quite a while as well. But whereas financial wellness solutions primarily kind of focus on the employee's experience, and the total reward statements have primarily focused on the employer's challenges, we think that you can actually combine the two together into something that supports both the employer and the employee. And what that means is that we have this thing called like the 3 A's, which is awareness, advice, and action. So with the range of different items that you offer in the total compensation, so it's not just salary, it's your retirement plans, your health insurance, your HSA and FSA and the pre-tax accounts, any equity compensation if you offer it, maybe in the form of an ESPP, and all the perks that you offer. So the traditional method is to highlight all of those things in a benefits booklet, and maybe promote that during a open enrollment, which is great. I mean, you put a lot of time and energy into those offering specific benefits, but the challenge is that information is static, and it's also not personalized to the individual. I think, Steve, we had a conversation previously at a different event, and one of the insights from the panelists was that open enrollment, so current methods of communicating benefits happen primarily only once a year, generally, and maybe through email newsletter throughout the year. But the moments that individuals make financial and life decisions are not limited to one time a year. So the question is, how can you communicate benefits proactively throughout the year, just in time, whenever individuals are looking for it? Here's a concrete example. I was talking to a chief people officer about a year ago, and he was saying that they offer incredible family support benefits, but way too often he finds that employees would not be aware of them and then file for maternity or paternity leave, that was the first time that he learned about it, and he was like, "Wait a second, we offer such incredible fertility and infertility benefits and so on." And so the question is, how can you meet employees where they are and do that in a scalable yet personalized way? So that's exactly what we are doing with a total compensation menu, is that our advisors and our platform will help deliver and communicate all of the benefits year round, rather than it being kind of a static one time a year statement of the things that you're getting.
Sounds great. So I have a two-part question. Looks backward a little and then forward. So the question is, did companies not offer these benefits, wellness tools and other financial wellness benefits? And then now, of course, we're in the midst of the Great Resignation. There's tremendous competition for talent. Is this a really a real incentive that companies can present in terms of attracting employees and retaining them?
Yeah, those are great questions. Like I said before, these benefits, total reward statements and financial wellness have existed for a while, right? But they've mostly been isolated benefits. And from a financial wellness perspective, they've mostly been kind of like a call center of financial advisors that employees could maybe reach out to, or an EAP, for which we've seen a lot of. But the result has been that utilization rates have been quite low around financial wellness, which we have found has been, when we first started, actually there was a bit of a dichotomy between the utilization rates of financial wellness benefits and the hair on fire need that we were hearing when we were talking to employees who were facing financial challenges, but also HR teams and people teams who were struggling to communicate the value of one of the biggest spends in a company's P&L. And so what we've found is that by incorporating the full total compensation details into financial plans, we see orders of magnitude higher utilization. So we're really proud that across all of our employers, over half of employees work with Northstar. We think that can be even higher, but I think that's a testament to the approach that I described, which is supporting the entire employee experience as a partner to HR and people teams. And that does include, for example, you mentioned with the candidates as well. It's not just about for new employees, but also what does the candidate experience look like? And we've all read about the Great Resignation, and so I think we're trying to solve for is getting out of this constant yearly cycle of needing to add another perk because maybe our competitors from a hiring perspective also offer that perk. And it's kind of like keeping an eye on your neighbor, right? We want to move towards a world where employers are able to offer benefits with a clear understanding of what their employees actually need and what their population looks like, but also highlighting what those benefits that you're offering for each individual situation. So in addition to a total compensation menu, we have a tool, a visual offer letter tool that does exactly the same thing. For a candidate, you can actually see and understand what different benefits you're receiving and why it matters for your financial situation.
Oh, you have a window into what's going on in workforces through your partnership with companies like Snap and Zoom. Have you picked up on some trends from them?
Yeah, so what we found is that it's important that financial wellness programs are not generic, because oftentimes one size fits all programs are quite generic. We have this saying or value at Northstar that the advice that we give can't be searched on Google. I mean, anybody can find that information on Google. And we have plenty of clients who show up who are incredibly knowledgeable about the different topics that they're facing, but they're facing blockers, whether it be getting comfortable with taking a risk, or talking through the emotional and mental aspects of your financial situation, maybe as an immigrant. There was a really impactful story that one of our financial planners shared in an all hands recently, where exactly that happened. There was a woman who was an immigrant from Indonesia and knew a lot about personal finances and clearly well read, but was really struggling still to take action on it. And coincidentally, one of our financial planners is also Indonesian, and kind of had a heart to heart in their first conversation, and that really unblocked the ability to move forward with the advice that we were giving and that they had read online. And these kind of stories are really rewarding to see, and really common, actually. So we've done a number of different talks as well around highlighting the unique experiences around African Americans and personal finances, or Asian Americans and personal finances, Hispanic Americans. And so highlighting those stories, not only to create a community around like-minded people, but also allies for those groups are incredibly important. And what we've also heard, as I said before, is supporting employees year round is so important. It's not just about saying, hey, here's what you get one time a year and then kind of disappearing, but that year round support we found is also a trend that we're seeing that's really important.
Well, it seems like there are huge psychological and cultural factors that bear on people's decision. I suppose if you're faced with something very complex, I mean, there's a default position of doing nothing, but then there's also the position that you wind up in when those other factors are weighing in, maybe more than they should, or without being filtered through a useful conversation with someone whose life experience, is similar. This is a perfect segue, because I wanted to ask you about all the ways in which you're looking now at individualizing benefits according to just several different planes, including employees' stages in life, their income levels, their backgrounds and life experiences. So could we start with life stages, which brings so many different choices as you go through?
Yeah, supporting all different life stages is incredibly important, and I think traditionally when I meet a person and they ask me what I do, and I tell them that we help provide financial advice, the most common reaction is that of, oh wow, that's just for rich people. And the system has been built in a way that makes it so that it's only for rich people. But also those who can afford an average of $300 a month cost for a fee-only financial advisor. And that's just unattainable for a lot of people. And so income level also correlates with life stage as well. So it's not just about helping people who already have money, but it's also helping people who maybe work an hourly job and have issues with living paycheck to paycheck or inconsistent paychecks. Income volatility. Right. And that is a completely different set of challenges from people who are getting ready for retirement or looking to start a family or send their kids and pay for their college education. Yeah, so it's important to provide a framework that is personalized, and you create a plan for each individual situation, but also recommend the different tools that are available to them at a certain point in time. And this kind of goes back to actually my earlier point of how can you communicate the value of what you're receiving to each individual employee. If you're a recent grad and you get a lot of information about, say, your 401k, or information about fertility benefits. They may not care as much about it. Maybe they're in a different life stage. I'm not saying everybody is, but I think it's about not providing a one-size-fits-all solution, but rather a solution that can meet each employee where they are, and understanding their specific needs at that point in time.
The other day, I was talking to an author and financial journalist who was telling me that he and his wife were seeing a financial advisor for the first time because their kids are getting ready to go to college. I thought, kids? And he said, yes, twins going to college. So I hope he has a good advisor. So it can happen to people belatedly at all stages. The other aspect I wanted to ask about is the very important part of personalization would be addressing a workforce of different ethnic backgrounds and life experiences. And people face things that are kind of insidious and hidden, like the black tax. And how are you helping companies like really fit this into their overall DEI goals?
Yeah, I think this is an incredibly important question, and we're seeing more and more. I mean, some companies are even having somebody who's head of DEI, which is really awesome to see. And I think first and foremost, DEI is a competitive advantage, and making sure that employers support the full range of different backgrounds is incredibly important, and is a competitive advantage to attract and retain the most talented employees. And some of the ways that we are able to do this, I mentioned before actually, is hosting events with ERGs and inviting allies to those presentations to highlight a lot of the unique experiences. I think there was a really powerful anecdote from somebody I spoke to who actually went to business school at Stanford. And first day of a class, everybody got up and told their kind of personal stories of why they were excited to be there. And student after student, the story was the same, which is, oh, my grandfather or great-grandparents moved to the US, and really grateful for them, and I'm here. And the person I was speaking to was like, had the realization that they were her classmates' grandparents or great-grandparents' generation. And so starting already behind was such a powerful story to recognize. And the other aspect is that it's so important about these kind of ERG presentations is that they're trying to dispel, our goal is to dispel a lot of the shame that people have around talking about their finances, and realizing that their stories are quite common. And there have been countless examples also where African Americans have been discriminated against in the financial services industry. One of the most insidious ones was where a mortgage lender or life insurance company will quote African Americans a higher rate than non-African Americans. And so it's highlighting these stories and highlighting the feeling that just because I'm receiving a great salary doesn't mean that it's enough to have enough to retire, because maybe I'm sending money home to support my parents, and that's what the black tax is referring to. So I think highlighting the stories is number one, that's really important. And number two is, as I've said before, the personalization of that advice. I would like to work with an advisor who is similar to me, just like when I work with a therapist, I want to work with somebody who's similar to me, or go to a doctor and work with somebody who's similar to me. And the same is with financial advice. It's incredibly personal, and finding that fit is incredibly important. So from a diversity perspective, we've also found that it's important for us to make a difference as well, and not just pay lip service to the diversity challenge. I found out recently that there are only about 250 new Black CFPs a year. And that is obviously not tenable. And
No.
we didn't want to just sit and accept it as a fact. I mean, the pipeline problem is not an excuse for lack of diversity. So we created a program to sponsor aspiring financial advisors to study for the CFP exam and sit for the CFP exam and cover their certification costs. And we actually had our first financial advisor just get her CFP, which is really exciting to see. And so I think it's a commitment that we're making, and also we hope to see that employers are making to provide the type of support to a diverse team, but also a diverse set of benefits to level the playing field for employees, not just for this generation, but future generations.
It's great that you discovered this problem with the lack of planners of color, and you did something about it. I mean, some people might say, "Oh, that's mission creep," that's beyond. But it's kind of core to have these advisors, and as part of what you offer. At which point, I wanted to ask, could you tell a little bit more what that's like, the interaction between an employee and their advisor? How might that work?
Yeah, so as I said, we wanted to make sure that there's a really flexible experience to work with an advisor. So it's a combination of working with a financial advisor as well as self-service tools. Actually, see a question here that's related to that, so I'll answer it here related to the self-service tools. We want to bring in the best of both worlds, because financial advisors and humans are really good at empathy, judgment, complex situations, but technology and fintech, what I saw as a venture investor, is really great at analyzing large data sets, creating analyses, always on, always moving money between your bank accounts, always tracking your account balances to alert you to opportunities or risks. So by combining the two together, we actually find this interaction where employees can create a foundational level of understanding and management of your finances, but having advisors come over the top with specific questions, that last mile. I think this is not scientific, but I would say like 75% of financial advice is objective, like you should do this. If you want to pay off your student loans, you got to pay off the highest interest rates first. And there's kind of an objective path for financial advice. But the last 25% is quite subjective. It's based on our risk tolerance. It's based on how we feel about debt. It's based on how much we should want to keep in our bank accounts for an emergency fund. And it's that last mile that people get caught up. And so that's why this hybrid approach, we could have easily gone with a fully automated solution in this world of AI, right, and chatbots, but we still feel that human connection, and we've seen this in our data and the anecdotes and case studies that this approach makes a big impact. The second thing that's important to note is that this isn't just like a traditional financial plan. You're not getting a 50-page PDF document and you kind of just file it in your proverbial drawer until the next time that you, again, back to that framework of the vitamin versus painkiller. We wanted to create a completely digital multi-platform product, whether it be on desktop web or on your iPhone app, so that people can access it where they are. And also rebuilding financial advice delivery from first principles. So again, our background in product and product design, how can we deliver advice? We call it in a modular way. So instead of overwhelming somebody with an entire life plan, if I wanted to do one thing today or this week or this month or this quarter, this year, what would I do? And doing it in kind of prioritization. So I think, as I said before, one of the biggest challenges around kind of following through with financial advice is complexity and having to balance multiple competing goals, which is pretty much everybody. I mean, if you want to save and invest at the same time, that's already a competing goal. And so how can a systems generate advice that balances all those goals and helps you actually move forward with that advice? So that's a very high level kind of philosophy on how we actually what the experience actually looks like. But in a concrete way for the self-service tools to answer that question, it's anything related to retirement planning or saving or paying off your debt or saving for your child's education. So it's a number of self-service tools that work through different goals.
But the personal touch comes in as a really important factor, I would think, especially just having covered business as a journalist. I've just read stories about how if you have a human who helps, solve your problem, it makes a really indelible impression. People are grateful for that. I want to ask, we've talked so much about the benefits for employees, which is of paramount importance, of course, but what about the companies themselves? What are some of the tangible and intangible ways that they benefit from providing this?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's something that was really important to us when we first started working with employers. Again, it's if total reward statements primarily have been for the employer and financial wellness is for the employee, how can we solve a problem for employers and HR teams as well, so that the reason that you're doing this, even though it's important, isn't just out of altruism, but it's actually helping you. And what we've seen is that the problem that we're solving is that despite how much employers spend on compensation and the greatest benefits, employees still often just look to a higher salary as the only path to achieve their goals. I mean, we've all been there, myself included. An employee says, hey, like I got an offer for a higher salary. And you're trying to communicate to them after they've already made the decision to leave, what about all these other things that you get? And so what's really important to us is that through our financial wellness platform, we want to help employees understand what they're even getting and take full advantage of those to achieve their goals. This is really important to show employees and candidates that you care. But ultimately, whether it be through equity compensation or seeing that you have a great health insurance benefit or you're getting a great fertility benefit or mental health benefit, these are the things that can help improve retention and especially in this hiring environment. And on the reporting side of things, we want to make sure that we make the connection between what you're offering and your employee population. I think what's really interesting is that benchmarking for compensation and benefits have mostly been around comps, and but somewhat removed from the actual impact on employees' personal situations. So if we can give an employer a leading indicator that a trending goal is to start a family, then our employer partners can more proactively plan for that and maybe introduce a new health insurance plan in the next year's plan design that is really great for childbirth and supporting families, or maybe considering backup child caregiving benefits. This is one example. So we want to help employers more proactively understand the ways that they can support their team. So again, financial wellness is the foundation for everything. And what this has led to finally is, I think I've said this a few times, but what does it mean to be a true partner or an extension of our employer partners? And that's being able to have the full familiarity of your comp packages and benefits packages, but also being able to build that personal relationship with each individual employee. So we've heard resoundingly positive feedback with this approach, both from a utilization rate perspective, but also from our clients who say that we save them hundreds of hours to do things that they previously couldn't, because the current solution is to hire more people on your team, to sit down with each employee one-on-one. But even then, maybe HR teams, we've heard that it's difficult to become experts in this range of different questions. I was talking to the VP of engineering at a public company recently, and he was saying that his employees are coming to him asking if they should buy a house. He's like, I don't know. He's Googling it and then turning and talking to his employees, which is, if there's anybody from legal on this in this panel, I apologize for that story. But I think to culminate the value, I think we've been described as like a springboard for all the benefits that you're offering. And we've been described as helping HR scale without scaling HR costs. So again, it's really important for us that we support not only the employees, but also the employers.
I want to ask, I just want to remind the audience, use the Q&A button if you'd like to ask a question. We have about 10 or 15 minutes left. But before we go to those, I had one more that I wanted to ask you, Will, which is kind of a political question. And I know that some in our audience are probably wondering this, which would be, why can't companies just solve some of these issues for employees by simply paying them more?
It's a great question. It's for those who can, and employers who have the ability to reassess and create equitable pay and top tier pay to support employees, then yes, by all means, you should do that. But what we find is more of a realistic and common situation is that it's not just about being paid more. It's not just about adding 401k match. Actually, one of the very common moments in which we talk to employers is that employees are asking for a 401k match. And that's really challenging to justify to the CFO, for example, because it's essentially giving everybody a raise. It's a one-to-one ROI. And so I think we think about it from an ROI perspective that it's more than one-to-one because we're helping employees take advantage of things that you're already offering and helping them manage their finances more effectively so that what they're just getting already is more efficient. So I think it's really important that it shouldn't just be about the companies with the biggest checkbook that win the best talent. It's about the mission and values that you have, and a lot of that is reflected by the amount of care that you showed and provide to employees.
And in fact, some companies are having to pay people more in this competitive environment. I want to get to some audience questions now. One is, all right, here. Is this service, like Northstar's, suitable only for tech companies and big companies?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think one of the kind of misconceptions is that this is just for people who offer incredible benefits and spend a lot on their employees. First off, I mean, financial challenges are universal. It's not just so if you look at the employees, then everybody faces these challenges. But this foundational advice is probably the biggest impact that we see is not necessarily on optimizing the perks that you get, but figuring out how do you manage your cash flow, how do you manage your debt, and how do you decide how much to invest in your retirement plans. And employers all offer health insurance, and with the health insurance, how can we guide people to make the decisions for their personal situations? And health insurance is an incredibly large spend, both for the employer as well as the employee, and maybe not traditionally included in a definition of financial wellness, but has very real financial implications. Every single time we go to the doctor or fill a prescription, or God forbid, have to go to the emergency room, these are all costs that impact not only incidentals, but also planning for our future. So while it's great that with tech companies, they offer pretty robust benefits, including equity, and that only increases the amount of tools that we can offer to and point solutions we can use to achieve financial goals. A lot of the impact is done through the foundational aspects of finances.
Sounds good. Another person asks, can the benefits of your service to the company show up in any way that can be measured?
Yeah, this is really important to us, and especially in our reporting, not just to our employer partners, but to ourselves to make sure we're honest, is that it's not just about saying how many people use it, which we're very proud of, again, that 50% number, but also can we show that employees are better off as a result of Northstar? And one of those is measuring the overall employee financial health. And again, all of this data is aggregated and depersonalized. If we don't have enough data about a specific area, we won't report it. So that protecting that personal information is paramount. But in terms of the aggregate data, we're able to report things like average savings rate, or how much you have in your emergency fund, or average student loan amount. We've had a client work with us to understand what the average student loan amount was, to figure out whether they should take advantage of the legislation around being able to contribute to student loans as an employer tax-free, up to a little over $5,000. And so number one is understanding the employee's financial health. We find that 90% of employees are more confident after working with Northstar. The second is saving HR teams hundreds of hours, and this is what we've heard from our clients, is the hundreds of hours that they need to do to run all the presentations, oftentimes across multiple different offices as we're increasingly distributed as teams. And helping employers make more personalized benefits decisions, as I've spoken to before, because they can see that real impact. And then finally, there's multiple examples where companies have done tender offers or gone public, and they often, CHROs and their teams will get a message from their CEO saying, we have 9 months we're going to go public. And helping not only the employer, but also employees navigate that is a big part of what we are able to support with as well.
Wow, that's what wouldn't have occurred to me, but that's a turning point in a company and for its employees. One other question is, how can you explain more about the benefit of working with a Northstar advisor over another competitor, or a financial advisor doesn't have any connection with the employer?
Yeah, it's a great question, because the financial advisors have existed for a long time. I'll start with the kind of independent financial advisor. The first and foremost is that employees oftentimes, if they go find an advisor by themselves, they have to pay out of pocket. And that is a severe limiting factor as to who has access to financial advice. And that current system is what has led us to this current situation, where the majority of people don't have access to financial advice. Also, the process of finding a trustworthy financial advisor is incredibly difficult. It's an industry that is regulated on the investment advice side of things with the SEC, but on the financial planning side is quite a bit less structured. The CFP board is one of the most reputable, but there are a whole alphabet soup of certifications that don't necessarily mean that you are a fiduciary. So making sure that employees or individuals can not only pay for it, but find somebody who's a good match is a problem that they face as well. The third issue with working with an independent financial advisor is that it's a very traditional approach. So again, you can't take action on it. It's that 50-page PDF. But maybe more importantly, let's say you as an employer subsidized employees to go to a marketplace of financial advisors. So you solve for the trust aspect. These financial advisors are kind of like a call center. They don't really understand your comp and benefits packages either. So let's say an employee comes to we've seen this a lot. The employee asks a question about the 401k plans. And maybe they have a question around what happens when your automatic contributions hit their yearly max. Does it automatically stop? Well, the financial advisor, they're going to come back to you with that question. So it's not like a true delegation, not a true partner to answer those questions.
Right.
The second type of advisory that I saw in the question was the say your retirement plan advisor will oftentimes have a free financial advisor. So again, similar challenges as with the independent advisor, albeit it is free in this case because they're often using it to try to increase enrollment in their 401k plans. And that kind of is the main point with that as well. They have an incentive to recommend that employees put more money into a 401k plan. And we want to make sure that our definition of financial wellness is more expansive than just retirement. In some scenarios, depending on the situation, it may actually make sense to for an individual to defer putting money into their 401k because they have an incredibly high interest rate, let's say credit card debt that they owe. So it's a very nuanced decision that you want to make sure that there are no incentives, either public or under the table, that would make somebody, an advisor, give advice that's not what is in the best interest of the individual.
Wow. I think we have room for time for one more. And this is one from the audience that I'll bet you've heard before and have a very good answer for, which is, what advice would you give to employees who are trying to convince hesitant higher ups that a tool like Northstar is a worthwhile investment?
Yeah, this is a great question. And I think this is phrased as an employee who's trying to convince higher up. So I think this is really interesting to think about, because there are multiple people in a company who could benefit from this. It's not only the HR teams, but it's also the finance teams. It's also the talent and recruiting teams. So I'll walk through each of those. So for the HR and benefits teams, well, number one, you voicing your desire for this and need for this is incredibly important, is already very impactful, because oftentimes they're not, when we find that employers and HR teams listen to feedback from employees. But the second thing is everything that I've been saying so far, drawing the connection between and redefining what financial wellness is. This isn't just like a financial advisor, but this can actually help solve problems that they have as well. So I'm sure, and depending on who you're talking to, maybe during open enrollment, where many companies are going through open enrollment right now. Hey, like, wouldn't it be amazing to have like a concierge that can work with each individual one-on-one? Or wouldn't it be great if there was somebody who can answer all your questions related to equity or health insurance? And so focusing not only on the ways that it can help the employees, but also help the day-to-day decisions that the HR teams face. One of the very first pieces of feedback that I received when we were doing information interviews with HR leaders was that one CHRO said to me, "Will, like, everybody, I get 10 cold emails a day from vendors, and everybody's promising to add value. I don't need more value added. I need somebody to help solve the problems that I have." So I think that's an incredibly important thing to remember when talking about the value that something like this can provide. And then related to CFOs and finance, I think there are multiple ways to think about it as well. Maybe one of them is related to maybe if the company is currently facing questions around adding 401k match. But another area that's really interesting is related to health insurance and health plan enrollment. Maybe this is a bit counterintuitive, but there is a large longitudinal Carnegie Mellon study across hundreds of health plans that found that on average, every year, an employee will waste up to $2,000 in health costs, oftentimes in terms of premiums, for choosing the wrong health plan. And this is not a surprise to me, and it may not be a surprise to many of the attendees here, because again, the theme of complexity, we've all gotten those SBCs and the tables, and what is a HMO versus a PPO, and what is an HSA versus an FSA. And so people will and I did this when I graduated, I chose the plan that seemed the best, which is usually the least risky, but also the most expensive, because it has great deductibles and low out-of-pocket max. But oftentimes, if the employee or the employer is paying for all of it, is an increased cost, and people don't use those health plans. So obviously, the advice needs to be the right advice for the individual. Let's say they're a recent grad with no health issues. Maybe we would say, hey, take a look at this high deductible health plan, which comes with an HSA, and you can use it for retirement. And so it's that kind of next level advice that we can create more efficient benefit selection. And if you can save $2,000 per employee per year for however many people you get to enroll in a high deductible plan, that's another aspect that may be helpful to talk to, like, the finance department.
Well, thank you, Will. We're coming to the top of the hour here. This has been a fascinating conversation. I wish that there had been services like yours when I was an entry-level corporate employee, but I'm glad you're here now. So thanks to our sponsor, Northstar, and everyone who participated today. I'd just like to add that if you'd like to join us for more virtual events, you can head to our website, fromday1.co, and check out more of our upcoming webinars and conferences. As a reminder, one of our monthly virtual events is coming up tomorrow. There's a link to register in the chat space. The title is Building a Skilled Team, How Upskilling, Coaching, and Recognition Can Help. This is very valuable for employers who are dealing with the Great Resignation and retention and all the other related issues. Thank you everyone for joining us. Stay well.